Hello, this is Tales of Dread. Tonight, we're going to tell you some glitch in the Matrix stories. So have fun, but don't forget to like, share, and sign up. I was a Caucasian Filipino boy living in Manila. I had 2 siblings and a single mother. I was an athlete, and because I was good at track and field, I got a scholarship to college. Everything seemed so real. I had a family member who cared about me and would tell me stories about how they would talk to me when my mother was sick. I remember talking to them in Filipino, but I don't even know what the words mean anymore. I also used Reddit when I had time to kill. What gives me the creeps is that I also follow this exact thread, and when I lived in the Philippines, the year and date were the same as they are now. But now I'm 29 years old and a citizen of Mexico. I also went out with a girl from the Philippines. We were crazy about each other when we were together. I remember that we went on dates and ate at malls and other places in Manila. Also, it drives me crazy that when I look for these places we've been online, they all exist. Even the names of the places. I also remember fighting with my brother and with people I didn't know when I went to clubs. The pain in those memories is very real, and I always hung out with my 4 best friends. I finished high school and had a cat, so it was all real. I also had dreams where I talked to my friends about death and whether or not God existed. Since we were all Catholic and the country was very conservative, just like mine, everything seemed real. When I was out drinking with my friends at a bar, we got into a really bad fight. This guy hit me on the head, and then everything went black. I woke up in the hospital with a very painful neck and a very bad headache. My sister and cousin were the first people I saw. They told me I had been out of my body for 3 days. During this time, I was so confused and scared that I was having panic attacks. My family thought that these attacks were caused by the medicine I was taking. I got out of the hospital 4 days ago, and now I'm having very strange thoughts. I can't tell what's real and what's not anymore. I wanted to tell my family about it, but I don't think they would believe me, and I think they would most likely just ignore it. I don't know what to do or what just happened. I want to say more, but it's hard for me to find the right words. Everything was real, and now it all is again. This is very weird, but let's start. I recently started buying records because I had some extra money. I like the Rolling Stones, and every weekend there is a small market where people like me can buy and sell things. So you should buy random things and sell random things, and sometimes you can find someone selling their old records. So I decided to ask some people if they had any Rolling Stone records. So I went to an old guy's house who was selling records, and I looked through them. It looked like an album by Brian Jones. No, not the Stones. Only Brian I didn't know he did music on his own. I couldn't believe it, so I bought it and went home. I remember that there was no album name on the record's cover. It just said Brian Jones and showed a picture of him waving at the camera. Anyway, to make a long story short, I played it, put it on the counter, and went to bed because it was late. When I woke up, it wasn't where I put it, and now I can't find it. Even online, I can't find anything about it. Every site I go to says that he has never put out anything on his own. I also can't remember what the record sounded like, except that it made me feel really good. So, this might have started maybe a year and a half ago. I have dinner and a board game at my friend's house. Her husband has a lot of video games. Some of them he bought himself, and others were gifts. He asked me on my way out that night if I wanted a couple of games, since I had just bought us 4. I said yes, and he gave me a copy of The Witches of Wild Tons and one of the more recent Batman games, both still in their original packaging. I don't play as much as they do, but I was glad to have them and a few months to play other games here and there. I left to start reading The Witcher. There was a public house. I liked a lot about the game, so I used my phone to take a few pictures and kept going. Just never got around to it. Since I moved to a new place soon after, and all my games stayed in the Xbox, I didn't need to take them out. Even though the Batman game was still sealed, I moved into a new place, set up my games and consoles, and went on with my life. I never really went back to the game, but I had planned to sooner or later. Fast forward to the last month or so, and it's another routine dinner and game visit. I'd been there before, and didn't mind going back. This time, as I was leaving, he asked me again if I wanted some video games. I'm always up for trying something new if he doesn't want them. And again I say okay, then he gives them to me, and I opened them to find sealed copies of Batman and The Witcher. So I kind of looked confused and say, "I thought you already gave me these." One of them I've already played. He said, "I forgot about them the night he last gave them to me." So it's weird to me. But I take them, and when I get back to my apartment, I expect to find the copies in my cabinet, because I always saw them there whenever I opened that cabinet to get another game. But they aren't there any longer. At this point I think I'm going crazy. But I remember that on my old phone, I had taken a picture of the tavern. I quickly scrolled down and found him, so I must have had it at some point in the past. People have already asked me just to get these pictures if I gave him the games back at some point and forgot about them, or if he's just messing with me by saying he never gave them to me in the first place. I know that's not what happened though, because I was the one who brought these games home the first time. This is the honest truth, and I still don't understand it. We stayed at his house a lot with my boyfriend. We usually went out to dinner, then went back to his house to watch movies before going to bed. We went out to dinner one night, and everything was fine. After he had a beer, and I had one drink, we left the bar and went back to his house. I remember sitting in bed with him and talking about what kind of movie we wanted to watch. I was confused because I couldn't remember going to sleep at all. I always fell asleep with the TV on because it was always on before we went to bed. I found it strange, but I thought it might be because we were all so tired that we couldn't remember going to bed. When my boyfriend woke up, I asked him if he remembered going to bed the night before. I only remember that we talked about putting on a movie, but I don't remember anything else. I said it. We both came to the same conclusion. We couldn't remember going to bed. I was shocked. We usually stayed up until 2 a.m., but we think we both went to sleep around 9 p.m. the previous night. We weren't exhausted. We weren't drunk. We couldn't remember why we went to bed. We went out to get breakfast, and even though we were both still confused, we tried not to think about it too much and just started making jokes about it. Then when we were at the restaurant, I had to go to the bathroom. As I opened the door, an old woman looked at me and asked, "Did you get a good night's sleep?" I was so surprised and scared. I had no way to move. When I told my boyfriend that she had just walked past me and out of the restaurant, he thought I was messing with him, but I was so scared and pale that he finally believed me. After that, nothing else ever happened, and we've never been through anything like it again. But it still gives me the creeps on my way to work this Wednesday. I went to the gas station I always go to. I go there 5 days a week, every day. When I walk in, everything has changed. All of the drink stations are new, and the food area has been redone from top to bottom. Tuesday morning, none of this was different, and I couldn't believe that they had redone a gas station in one night. When I went outside, I saw that 2 gas pumps were gone and a bunch of mulch bags were piled up where they had been. Then I leave to go to work, but I somehow end up on the wrong street and can't find my way. I've been driving around these neighborhoods for months, but now I'm lost trying to find my job. Then the girls come downstairs. I work in an addiction home group, and one girl keeps saying how confused she is and how nothing makes sense today. Later in the day, someone kept saying that all she wanted to do was cry, and she didn't know why. Then, while running errands, I go down the same street I always do, and all of a sudden, 4 houses are gone, and a grove of trees has been planted where those houses used to be. I've never seen them before, and every time I do, I start to freak out. They are right next to a building that my family has owned for 20 years. I am very familiar with the whole area. When I called my mum today, she told me that my sister and her friend Jenna were going out tonight. That was the last straw for me. Since 2003, I've known Jenna. I asked Jenna how much longer it would be until she gave birth. My mum stopped talking and asked me what the heck I was talking about. She said Jenna has never been pregnant. I looked her up online and found nothing. I just asked my sister about her and she laughed in my face and said Jenna isn't fertile and will never have kids. I remember the exact day my sister told me she was pregnant. She asked me to guess who was pregnant, and my third guess was Jenna. I still have no idea what the hell is going on with my life. This past Christmas, the father of my best friend Lucy had a severe brain aneurysm. He went into a coma and just woke up about 13 days ago. Lucy and her family were so happy that he woke up relatively healthy and happy, given the circumstances. However, they soon found out that he still thinks it's 2010. Lucy and I were both 13 years old in 2010, when we were both 23. Lucy was a dancer when she was younger. She stopped dancing when she graduated from high school, which was one of the first things her dad asked her. We had just been to Lucy's recital. At first, everyone thought he was just drunk, but it soon became clear that he can't remember anything from the last 10 years. Lucy has an older brother who got married and had a child within the last 10 years. Their dad doesn't know her brother's wife because they had never met before 2010, and he didn't tell her he was a grandpa. This is a sad part of the story, but something even crazier has happened. Lucy's brother is 6 years older than she is, and in the 6 years before Lucy was born, her parents had a baby who was in the NICU for only 5 weeks. The weirdest thing about this is that her dad doesn't know they lost that baby, and he has memories of his dead child's whole life. When he asked about Duncan, they had to tell him that Duncan had died when he was a baby. Lucy's dad couldn't believe what he was hearing. He argued very strongly that Duncan played hockey, liked dinosaurs, was doing a co-op for the military, and wanted to be a firefighter when he graduated from high school. None of these memories fit with Lucy's older brother, who is still alive. So they ruled out the idea that he was mixing up his two sons. He remembers taking care of Duncan from the time he was born until he was 17. Duncan would have been 17 in 2010 if he hadn't died when he was a baby. He knew Duncan's real birthday and told everyone that he bought Duncan's first used car with him on that day. He has made up memories of his dead son while remembering everything else perfectly. All of his other memories from the time he was born in 1961 until the year 2010 are clear and true. But the fact that he can remember a whole life that never happened is freaking out everyone. He is really sad about his son right now, even though he was sad when his son died 27 years ago. Losing this has been the worst thing that could ever happen. His father wondered if something supernatural was going on. As in, did Duncan's son give his dad memories from when his brain was not in this world? Have you ever heard of something like this happening to someone? I'm a woman of 23 years old, and the other day when I got up for work, the strangest thing happened. I remember walking up to my body and staring at it, trying to figure out whose hands I was looking at even though they were mine. It felt like I was wearing a mask and looking through eye holes. I also felt very dizzy. I just didn't care because I had been so tired the night before and thought it was nothing. I'd been sick with a cold for about a month. As soon as I walked into my bathroom, I reached for my toothbrush. I saw something move, and when I looked up, I saw a man staring at me in the mirror. We both looked at each other like we couldn't believe what we were seeing. His background was completely different from mine. His bathroom, shower door, etc. was different, and everything was in a different place than in the room I was in. However, he was holding his toothbrush as if he had also been reaching for it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, so I blinked a few times, and then he was gone. He looked to be about my age, in his 20s, and he was blonde and white. To hear the story, I'm a black woman, and I just want to know if this has happened to anyone else. I'm just interested because I've read similar stories to mine on this forum. More and more each day, my own experience is starting to freak me out. This happened to my mum in the 1950s, and it's one of our family stories that we still can't figure out how to explain. We don't believe in any kind of psychic stuff, but what happened still made no sense to us. And that's one reason why I like to look through this subreddit. So, she was a first-grade teacher in a small town in Scotland. It was her first job after college. She would take the bus to school, which would take about 20 minutes. She lived with her parents, and neither her school nor her house or any of her neighbours had phones yet. Because of what comes next, it's important to know this. When she was in the middle of teaching a lesson one morning, the school's headmaster, who was much older and strict, came in. He walked into her classroom and told her to get her coat and bag because he was taking her home because she was needed. My mum was very confused and worried about the situation. She did what she was told while asking about the class and why she had to go. He wouldn't tell her why she had to go. Instead, he kept telling her, "You're needed now." So, when they got back to her house, she ran in and found her mum on the floor with her dad, who had had a heart attack and fallen to the ground. "God bless you," her mum tells her. "I didn't want to leave him." Then, my mum and her headmaster went to get help, and my grandpa made it. She did briefly ask her headmaster what happened, but he just told her what he already knew, which was that she needed to go home, and he wouldn't talk about the situation anymore. I had a dream that I was back in high school at the start of my first year. Everything was the same, except that I could remember everything that had ever happened to me. In the dream, when I got out of high school, I told everyone in my class that I was from the future, but no one believed me. Only one very smart friend said that it might be possible to go back in time. Now things start to get strange. I told my friends about the dream afterward. When they said that in junior year their jaws dropped. One day, I was acting weird and asking questions about time travel, so I said I was from the future. They also said that I was there, but not really there. When I told them what I had dreamed, I could see the shock in their eyes. Strangest of all is that I don't remember much about that day. I remember some of the other things that happened in the dream, but I don't remember much about that day. I don't think my friends would be messing with me because I've known them for 15 years and can tell when they're being serious. On the weekends, I delivered Thai food to make extra money. It's a small restaurant in a shopping strip. So, I know everyone who works there, and most of them are my good friends. Anyway, I drive to work around 11 in the morning, and I get the first group of packages. Everything is fine until I look at the last one. It's for Sandpiper Street, which doesn't exist in the town where I live. In my town, I know for sure that it doesn't exist. I think the person who put in the order made a mistake and put the wrong address on it. I saved that one for last. After making the other deliveries, I went to make the last one and was shocked to find that it was gone. I looked all over my car for about 10 minutes, but I still can't find it. I don't want to get in trouble with my boss, so I call her and tell her I lost one of the orders. But I keep going about my day. It's about 5 p.m. I have a package sent to a house right next to the restaurant. I've been there a lot and know the guy, so it's great to see him again. I drive to his apartment, knock on the door, and walk up to it. When the guy opens the door, he just stares at me with a weird look on his face. He is holding a food container that looks eerily like the bad tie in the food bag that I am holding. He looks confused, laughs, and says something like, "Hey buddy, I thought we needed more food or something. What's going on here?" Confused. I asked him what he meant by this, and he smiled and laughed, as if he thought I was playing a joke on him. When I don't say anything, he starts to look more worried, and tells me that I already brought him his food 30 minutes ago. My face gets pale. I tell him it's impossible, and that the restaurant just gave me the order 5 minutes ago. His face also goes white. He looks really scared. He gets the bag in which the food came and shows it to me. I saw something that makes me feel even worse about what I've seen. The order number was the same each time. That can't be true. I just turned away from him and ran out of the building without saying anything. I throw the food in the back of my car and drive quickly back to the strip mall parking lot where the Thai restaurant is. I'm too scared to think straight. As I walk up to the restaurant, I see my car parked in front of it. I know it's my car because a week ago, after I blew out a tire, I had a new one put on, and it's different from the other three. At this point, I don't really know what to do, so I'm just sitting in my car with the engine running for a while. At some point, I decide I want to find out who the hell is driving a car that looks just like mine. I drive up and park about 30 feet away, facing it. Even though I'm scared, I get out of my car and walk toward the other version of my car. Because it's so dark, I can't see much through the windshield, but I could tell if someone was in it. When I get within 10 feet of my car, it starts up all of a sudden and speeds out of the parking lot at about 90 amp. I just went back to work without telling my boss, and I ate the food I was supposed to deliver when my shift was over. My mother had been dying for about 10 years. She was very sick and wanted to die more and more, but they gave her a pacemaker that kept her heart going, and when she went on a hunger strike, one of my brothers who had the power of attorney would have them tube feed her. I went to sleep Saturday night and woke up around 3:50 in the morning. I kept a tape recorder by my bed in case I remembered any of my dreams, so I grabbed it and recorded this. It's 10:04 a.m. and I just woke up. The whole house feels strange, like people were here just now, but not in a scary way. Then I got up and did the walkthrough, which is what you do when you wake up freaking out. I looked out the windows, checked the door locks, and went back to bed. I slept until 8:00 a.m. on Sunday when I got up, took my phone off the charger and started walking toward the living room when it rang. My brother with power of attorney called me to tell me that my mum had died in the middle of the night. I remember the exact time I thought it was, but I didn't say anything. He told her that he would wait with her until the body was taken away. So I told her I would go to her house and start getting ready for all the people who would be there for the funeral. When I went to my mum's house to get it, I had a strange feeling because she was gone and it wasn't her house anymore. Then I noticed a very strange thing. There was a postcard on a desk that was usually pretty cluttered, but it wasn't messy at all this time. That postcard was the only thing on the desk, and for some strange reason, the desk itself was empty, polished, and clean. I still don't know who did that or what happened to all the papers that she usually had on that desk. I got up and walked over to get the postcard. It was from our brother who had died 3 years before. It said, "I love you, Mama, and I'll see you on the 20th. The 20th of the month was the day my mother died. So this story has been going on for the last month, and I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm taking a business class at a college in British Columbia, Canada. My professor isn't a teacher or a professor at all. He's just a middle-aged guy who works in the field we're learning about. So the college asked him to teach a course at night. He is a very nice person. He's just not a real professor, so he's not very good at teaching. So during the first week of February, he talks about a task that needs to be done on March 2. We have to write a 3-page paper with citations about something we've learned in class. Besides that, he didn't say much more. Everyone in the next class asked him if he could put the assignment's rules and structure on our source site. He asks, "Will that help?" And it will, of course. That night, he put up a little note about the due date, what was expected, and how the work should be formatted. I started working on the paper early so I could get it over with. But work and life got in the way, and I didn't think about it for about a week. I went to my computer folder, but it's not there. It's not likely that I forgot to save it, but it's possible that I did. I'll find out when I get to class. I asked him if he wanted it to be sent online because I didn't see a Dropbox, or if he wanted it to be handed in person on Monday. This is where things get a little strange. He has no idea what I'm talking about, and says there has never been an assignment. I asked a few other students what I meant, but no one knew what I meant. Either I went to our grade structure and found some other assignment that had nothing to do with it, or there was nothing there. I also got a 10 mark for participating. I'm pretty sure I'm not going crazy, but this is so strange. Since I work full-time, I'm only taking 2 classes. So no, I didn't mix up my assignments with someone else's class in the last month, and I didn't walk through a doorway into another world. Except for this, everything else seems fine. At this point, I'm really freaking out. So I'm writing this about an hour after it happened. I've been learning this sub for a long time, and it's always been very interesting to me. But now I finally have something to say that makes me feel a little bit scared right now. I'm sorry if the title is bad, but I don't know how else to describe what I just saw. So I'm playing a video game with my headset on while sitting in the dark at my computer. My girlfriend is asleep behind me. We have a very noisy bed that makes a lot of noise when you move it even a little bit. I'm playing a game when I hear the bed behind me creak. When I look back, I see my girlfriend standing up. When I asked her what she was doing, she told me she had to go to the bathroom. Okay, no problem, I tell her, and then I just go back to my game. There was nothing unusual, right? But I decided to take off my headset until she got back so I could talk to her for a few more minutes. When I see her leave the room, the story starts to get strange. Then, after about 15 minutes, I realized she had been gone for a while when I heard the bed creak behind me again. When I turned around, she was back to sleeping the way she had been before she got up to go to the bathroom and was scared. I got up to go tell her mum what had happened in the other room. She tells me that she saw my girlfriend walk down the hallway to the bathroom. Then, not even 30 seconds later, my girlfriend's mom walked down the hallway and saw that the bathroom was completely empty. She didn't give it much thought at the time. We were both very scared, and we can't figure out why. I sit by the door, but I didn't see her come back in because my head was turned the other way and I was thinking about something else. I never heard her creepy as hell get back into our annoying bed. I've never had anything like this happen to me before, so I'm both very interested and very scared. As I already said, she told me that she swore that she never got up to go to the bathroom. This whole thing has me confused, and I don't know what to think about it. This happened to me a long time ago, so I'm not sure if it's a real memory or just a false one. However, my brother remembers the same thing. So, Me and my friends were playing football on a normal sunny day, nothing strange or unusual. We used to play in the forest next to the stadium when we were kids. A small path leads from the stadium to the forest. So, my friend Anne got upset about something while we were playing and she left without saying anything. Only my brother and I ever paid any attention to him, even though we were all close friends, and there were only about 5 or 6 of us at the time. So it seemed like no one else saw him. Like I said, he was just being my brother. He then went through the forest on the path I told you about earlier, and my burro and I followed him while calling for him to come back. He didn't go back. Instead, he just kept walking. So we gave up and went back to the stadium, where we saw him playing football and having fun with a big smile on his face. My brother and I both look at each other with faces that show how scared we are. When we told one of our friends and some of our other friends, they said that it never happened and that we were making it up. My brother and I were both surprised, and I think it's important to note that the path is the only way to get to the forest and back. Also, Annan was already a long way away from us when we decided to turn around. So he couldn't have come back faster than we did, because we were behind him and had to turn around to go the other way. We would have had a huge head start. We almost immediately started to follow Anna. So, as we followed him into the forest, we never saw his face because he never turned around. My boyfriend and I are in a long-distance relationship, so I don't think for a second that we mistook an A for someone else. He is all the way over in Michigan, and I am all the way over in Texas. We usually talk on the phone whenever we can, since our time zones are about an hour apart. When he's tired, he sometimes just falls asleep on the phone. I usually play some video games while I'm on the call. Often, he falls asleep with the phone on his face, and in his sleep he will hang up. Not a big deal. I just texted him good night, which is nothing out of the ordinary. Just maybe 30 minutes ago, though, he called me after the call and hung up. He asked me what I was doing and other normal things, but he didn't sound sleepy like he usually does, which was strange. I asked him if he had a bad dream, and what he said was pretty scary. He asked, "What do you mean? Right now I'm having lunch." I didn't understand. I laughed a little and asked him what he was talking about, since it was 8:00 p.m. where he was and very late for him to be eating lunch. I told him quickly that I had to end the call and go do something else. When I went back to check the call log, there was nothing there. There was no sign that he would ever call me like he did now. I saw his name and phone number before he called. But when I looked at my call log history, there was nothing there, so I didn't think much of it at the time. I kind of ignored it and went to the kitchen to get something to eat while I waited for him to call me back. My sister was also in the kitchen. I came out and asked her if she saw me look in the fridge, and she said that she did. So there's no way that I'm having some kind of problem that's making me dream about this, or make things up, or have some kind of delusion. My boyfriend has never called me to tell me that he was eating lunch at 8 p.m. at night. He then called me, maybe an hour after everything happened, and asked what was going on, and I'd told him what had happened and told him what had happened. And he looked just as scared as she did. He seemed to think that I was lying or just making everything up, but I know in my heart that I did not make this up. He later showed me his call log, but it had nothing in it. He's not the type to sleepwalk, sleep talk, or do anything else like that. So why is there no record of him calling me or me getting a call from him? It's weird and scary, and I've read about something similar on this forum before. Now it's happened to me. So, whether you believe it or not, I'm a little worried about the whole thing. My friend used to work at a popular gas station that had a walk-in cooler in the back where they sold beer. I was at the counter catching up with her during a slow afternoon. I remember feeling strange as a man walked in and went to the back to get something from the cooler. I continued talking to my friend, but the man seemed to disappear, so I thought he was just taking his time to get something else. Suddenly, the hair on my arms stood up, and I felt like someone was sitting on my chest, the way I did before. When I looked at the store's doors, I saw that the same man was walking in from the back this time. He bought his beer, paid for it, and then left. When I asked my friend if she'd seen him leave the first time he came in, she looked scared. See for yourself. Like me, she saw him go into the cooler and never come out again. So she knows that he never got out of that cooler. The first time this happened, my friend had the same reaction as I did. She was completely freaked out. I would have thought I was going crazy if she hadn't been there to back up what I said. We started talking about bugs, and she told me that she's had things like this happen to her before, and she still doesn't know what to make of it. I haven't been able to figure out why this man keeps going away and then coming back. This happened a few years ago when I was home for the holidays with some family members who were visiting at the time. There were between 12 and 14 of us, and we all stayed at my parents' house. You should know that my family is a pretty interesting group. All of them are professionals who have done well in their fields. There are a few MDs. Lawyers, psychologists, engineers, and musicians make up a fun and interesting group. Anyway, we would spend our days and nights catching up with each other, playing games, and having big meals where people talked, played music, and drank wine. Even if I only remembered one small part of these events, I liked them. Someone brought a charades game one afternoon, and we all started playing. At first, it was fun, but then it got more competitive, and people started shouting and trying to distract each other. Then something happened. It was my turn to guess, and my neurologist uncle was doing his best to show me what a word looked like with his body. He chose a card at random from the deck, waited a few seconds, and then punched the clock to start his act, but he couldn't even try for a moment. After clocking out, I felt a need, a certainty, and a word pushing to get out of my mouth. I screamed at the top of my lungs, cameras rolling. No one said anything. My uncle looked at me, took a long, deep breath, and smiled in a funny way. "You saw it, right?" he yelled. "This one doesn't count." I couldn't believe it. "No way." I told them that I was at the other end of the table and that everyone was looking at me, so how could I look at the card? I was just as confused as he was, but he insisted that there was no way I could have seen the card when he took it out of the deck from where I was. Also, the game had never been opened or played before that time. We had never played charades with that deck of cards before, so I couldn't either explain what happened. He was left confused and said it was one of the strangest things he had ever seen. Then he talked about the structure of the brain, neurons, and other things, and that was pretty much it. I don't know what made me say that word, which I've never used before, and I'm still not sure how it happened. Have fun. I guess the other day, this happened. I didn't feel well. So I took a book off the shelf and jumped into a hot bath. This book is one in a series of essays about how to understand and make music. I had a different copy of the same book about 10 years ago. I took it with me everywhere and read it from cover to cover, which ruined it so much that I had to throw it away. It had been wet and dried more than once, and some of the pages were falling out. Even in the margins, I wrote notes. This book changed my life, and I wish I had taken better care of the copy I had at the time. I had kind of forgotten about all of this when I grabbed this copy off the shelf to go to the bathroom. I bought the copy I was reading in the bathroom about 2 years ago at a bookstore. I remember being happy when I found it on a shelf way in the back. It looked almost brand new. I looked through the pages, but I couldn't remember if it was the same volume as the one I had before I bought it. So let's go back to when I was in the bath and reading the essays. Things are starting to look more and more familiar, which really grabs me and makes me think back. I realize, hey, this is it. Yes, I'm glad as hell to have this stuff again. And I remember the old worn-out copy I used to have. As I was thinking about it, I turned a page and saw a train ticket from 2006. The ticket goes from where I live to a big city nearby. I got chills because I've only had this copy of the book for about 2 years. The ticket looks older than the book it was based on how worn it is. I thought that someone else must have taken the same trip, but when I turned the ticket over, I saw that my name was on it. I don't know how this is possible, but that perfect copy from the bookstore had a train ticket with my name on it from 6 years ago, when I had the original copy that was destroyed. I remember going to see the Dalai Lama by train. I took the book with me everywhere I went. Several other small things that happened around me at the time make me wonder if I didn't just step into the reality next door. This happened when I was a sophomore in high school, which was a few years ago. I used to take choir, and the songs we practiced always stuck in my head afterward. I was humming one as I walked to class after choir, and when I turned the corner of the hallway, that voice that everyone has in their head said, "Dad's in the hospital, his heart." It was such a random and annoying thought that I just brushed it off as one of those strange ideas that sometimes pop into your head. I remember yelling at my brain for making me think of something so sad. Between bells, I only had 3 minutes. So I ran into class and sat down by 12:17. After school was over, my mum sent me a text message telling me to call her as soon as I got out of my last class. I called her wondering why she would want to talk to me so soon. She told me not to worry, but Dad went to the hospital today, I gasped. Not because I was surprised, but because I already knew. I remember rushing to ask why and how, and when she told me he had been having pains in his chest and some trouble breathing, they thought it was his heart. When I asked him what time he went to that day, he told me it was 12:15. She told me. I told my dad that I knew about all of this as it was happening, when I couldn't have known by any means. My father had never had any health problems before, and I wasn't even thinking about him that day when that thought came to me. Neither of us knows how this could have happened or how it could have been possible. When I use the email app on my phone, my name will sometimes show up as Leonia, which is not my name. My last name, however, will still show up as it should. It shows up in the field for toe, so it must be a bug in the app. Over the years, I've updated and changed phones, but the name keeps showing up that way in that app. A few days after my dad died, I got an email from him telling me where he put some money for me in case I needed it. The email was from a few years ago when it showed up in my inbox again. I've been worried and sad about how to pay for the funeral, and then I got an email from beyond the grave. It wasn't very much money, not enough for the funeral for sure. Only about $100 that he had put in a first aid kit, because ice storms were causing a lot of power outages in my city, and he wanted to make sure I had some cash on hand. Still, it made me feel so much better, like he was still there with me and I wasn't alone. I have no idea how the email got found again, but I've been checking it for years to see if my dad wants to get in touch with me that way. I thought about someone for the first time in years, and minutes later I ran into them. It's that easy, but I can't figure out how to explain it. I was driving to a liquor store before going to a party when I started thinking about a guy I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. Even at the time, I realized how strange it was and tried to figure out why I was thinking about him. The song on the radio had just come out, and I was driving to a place I would have thought of at least 100 other people before I thought of him. There was also no connection between him and what I was thinking before I saw him. Anyway, I told myself that it didn't matter. Then I saw him again in less than 5 minutes, right as I walked into the liquor store. It's a strange story, but it's not too wild. Nonetheless, I just moved to a new city to study, and ever since I got here, I've been noticing glitches all the time. They're usually small things, like when I drop something on the floor and it pops up a few feet away or just disappears. I've also been having crazy déjà vus, which can last for hours and happen more than once. I've always been able to guess what people were going to say, but what happened tonight really scared me. We went outside to smoke, while my girlfriend stayed in my room. We live in dorms. My friends stopped to talk to someone when we got back, so I went into the hallway where my room is. I see my girlfriend leave my room, walk down the hall, and go into her own room. She wasn't wearing the hoodie she had on before I left. Instead, she was wearing a dark t-shirt. I thought it was possible that she was warm. I thought something was wrong when I heard her lock the door behind her. That night, we were going to watch a movie. I knocked on the door, and my roommate asked me why. I told him that my girlfriend went in there, and he looked inside a room and said, "No, she's here." When I saw her sitting on my bed, my heart stopped. No one else at our school looked like my girlfriend, and no one got the keys to her room. I was pretty close, and I stared at her the whole time, sure that it was her. I'm sure no one else could have done it. It's 4 in the morning, and I feel like I've gone crazy. She didn't believe me, but it doesn't matter. I remember what I saw.